Talk a little bit about the metaphor in your latest book to do with stones and the river and the flow of the river, and kind of in relation to the things that we can't change within school, but having the space to do other things around it. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I wasn't quite sure what you meant, but it's what you've turned stones and river. What this is a metaphor that I've borrowed from Edward de Bono, where he talks about rocks and water, being a rock thinker or being a water thinker.
That's what I meant. Thank you.
Yeah, and I find it, but it could be stones and a river. It could work just as well. So you've improved on it and customized
it's my version.
in your usual inimitable fashion, Becky. So in the Edward de Bono version, I can't remember which of his books this is in, but I find it's both comforting and challenging. And I quite often use it in my presentations when you start getting the kind of yes, but questions from teachers. Yes, it's all very well, but now we're back in school and we've got Ofsted and we've got the pressure of the curriculum and we've got parental expectations and we've got ATAR and we've got standardized testing and we've got all this. And there is this sense of people feeling trapped by the rocks. The rocks stand for all the things you've got to do that you don't want to, all the places you can't go that you would like to, all the impediments that you see around you that stop you being the amazing, wonderful, learning power teacher that you really want to be. And the point of the analogy is that there are always going to be rocks, right? There are always going to be rocks around you. The question is that, so you don't have any choice about that. The choice that you have is whether you're going to focus on whether you're going to think about the rocks and feel trapped and depowered and angry, and I'd love to be doing all this stuff, but you know, they're going to have to completely revamp the examination system before I can do anything, kind of thing. Or are you going to be smart and think like water? Because water, the smart thing about water is that water doesn't give a stuff about rocks. Water doesn't give a second thought to rocks. The only thing that interests water is gaps. And water is very, very clever at finding gaps. You could put as many rocks as you like around a pool of water, and if there are any gaps, rocks will find them just like that, and go on. Water will go off on its merry way, heading, particularly if it's a pool on a slope, on a hillside. If there's the tiniest little gap there, water will find it, and on it will go. So our job is to acknowledge the existence of the gaps and don't bother about them. Go looking for, acknowledge the existence of the rocks, sorry, and just go looking for the gaps. I remember there was a quotation that that often comes to mind in this context, that used to be used by Oxfam to encourage people to donate to Oxfam, even if they didn't have a lot of money. And the quote was from an English politician, philosopher, character in the 18th century called Edmund Burke, who said somewhere or other, there weren't any women in those days, so he only wrote about men. So the quotation is in man language. The greatest crime a man ever committed was to do nothing because he feared he could only do a little. Right? And it's the same thing. It's the same sentiment. It's like, yes, the rocks are there. There are things. Of course, the other thing that water does is it wears rocks away. But that's a slow, long-term process. Water doesn't sit around feeling trapped and depressed that it isn't getting its needs met because there are rocks around it. The water's main job is to go on its merry way and find the gaps if it can. But in doing that, it will make the gaps bigger. I'm extending the metaphor now.
Yeah, we love that.
Right?
All about making the gaps bigger.
So
Sorry.
If there are things that we can do to change the status quo, we should do them. But we shouldn't wait until the gaps have got big enough to our liking before we start sliding through the gaps and doing all the little things in the classroom. And that's, in a way, that's one of the guiding maxims of the whole learning power approach. Little things that add up. Find the little gap, find the smart little thing, find the golden grain that cumulatively, when those things add up, it's like the mayonnaise stuff again. Cumulatively, when they add up, you've created a culture change by stealth rather than doing it head on. And I think that's not only smarter way of going about culture change, but it's also it's the only kind of change that becomes sustainable, because you've worked those changes into, they now are the new normal, those changes. So you're constantly, week by week, fortnight by fortnight, evolving the new normal in a way that the kids and their parents may hardly even notice. It's just another funny little thing, like, we're doing the traffic lights, or we've got a riskometer, or we're doing try 3 before me. And before you know where you are, you've got a different mood. You've got a different groundswell. So, don't fall into the trap of rock thinking just because you're back in school and all those pressures, you've been reminded of the rocks. Okay, hello rocks, there you are. You're still there, are you? Jolly good. Now I'm going to go about my business of finding gaps.
Yeah, perfect. Love that. I think we can do that. Yeah, another thing that has occurred to me with that kind of metaphor and talking in the leadership mastermind, this kind of occurred to me through our conversation, is that you can create rocks that aren't really there if you're not careful. So it's kind of like you can put systems in place that you feel like fit with the system, but actually you could break that apart and do something completely different. So I guess it's thinking outside the box, and maybe there is another way, and what that kind of what if thinking. What if we tried this? What if we could? So one thing we really noticed about lockdown is that siblings have been learning a lot together, and that have been really powerful. Well, what if we create more inter-year group learning? And
yeah, that's a nice idea.
So it's kind of like, at the moment, most schools are set up in year groups. Well, why is that? And what's the purpose of that? And okay, if we can't completely flip that on its head, where are our ins? So where are the gaps in that? And how can we start to make that happen?